Have you had permanent makeup to your brows, eyes, or lips? If so, how do you know when it's time to have it refreshed? Are you confused by how it all works? Well, if you are, I'm here to help you with that and also give you a couple of top tips on how you might be able to tell when things are ready for a refresh. I'm Sarah Gibb, a permanent makeup artist for over 13 years, specialising in natural looking results. I've treated over 6,000 clients and performed over 15,000 procedures, always with a focus on safety, precision, and results that feel like you. So first of all, it's important to understand that all of us permanent makeup artists are trained differently in the first place. We've all got different opinions on how long it should be left between appointments. I refer to these appointments as colour boosts, but you'll hear them referred to as refreshes or top-ups. The reason you'll get different opinions is because, like I say, we're all trained differently. We use different techniques, different needles, different pigments. We have different amounts of knowledge and different amounts of experience. And so because of that, it's quite important to realise that two artists will probably not give you the same advice unless they were trained by the same person originally. We are all very individual and very unique in our practices. So let's go through each area: brows, eyes and lips. And I'll give you some tips from my own experience as to what you can look out for when you might be ready for a colour boost, but you're not sure. So, eyebrows. You will see a lot of different styles of tattooed eyebrows. And what we're looking for when it comes to whether you're ready for a colour boost or not is how much pigment, and that's the particles of colour, are left in the skin. Let me just give you some extra information that might help you understand this next part. So when you have permanent makeup, we implant particles of colour into the skin. Depending on the look that you want, or depending on the skill or the technique desired by the artist that you choose, you will either have quite a lot of pigment implanted or not so much. Examples of lots of pigment can normally be seen by something like a block brow, so very strong, defined, saturated, very coloured in looking brow. There's different versions of this, so people can still do quite a saturated look, but with a lighter colour. So it doesn't look as strong, but there's still a lot of particles of pigment gone into that small area of skin in the brow. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a hairstroke looking brow, which has gaps in between. And so therefore it's got more skin showing and less particles overall because it's not covering the entire area. So when you've had permanent makeup to your brows, what happens over time is two key things. The first one is that the light will change the colour of the pigment that's sitting underneath your skin. So that pigment will sit under your skin and shine through. So it's behind, and then your skin tone is in front of it, and what the public see, or what you see in the mirror, is the colour that shines through. Now, by default, light breaks down colour. So for example, if you have a white unit and it's situated in front of quite a sunny window in your home, I can guarantee you that white paint is going to yellow over time. Equally, if you have a black t-shirt, for example, and you leave that on the line all summer and it's got the sun shining directly on it, pretty guaranteed by the end of the summer, that is going to look a yellowy greeny colour in places. This is just how light breaks down colour. Not necessarily the sunshine, but that does speed up the process, but the light in general. So the UVA and the UVB rays will shift the tone of colour. So when we have our eyebrows tattooed, we are exposed all the time. 365 days of the year, our eyebrows see light. So it's not surprising that over time, sometimes the colour will skew. The other thing that happens is that our body starts to break down the pigment particles that are in the skin. This is so unique to each individual, it varies from person to person, and it's absolutely impossible to say how long it's going to take for each person's body to do this job. But when it comes to looking at colour boosts, what we're looking for is for the body to break down enough of those particles so we can create some space in the skin to implant fresh colour. So this area that we've tattooed into is very small, and it will only hold a small amount of pigment particles. Think of it like a sponge. Once it's full with water, that's it. It will only hold a certain amount of water. Once it's full and you start to put more water in, it will just pour from the sides. If your eyebrows are still quite saturated with colour and the body hasn't broken down enough or taken enough out through your lymphatic system, if you've still got lots of pigment particles in this small area of skin, i.e. full sponge, if you then try and do a colour boost too early and add more pigment, there's no room. The pigment will have nowhere to sit. There's not enough space in that small area to implant more particles in between the ones that are already there because it's already full. And this is why it's really important to leave it long enough per individual so that you've got enough space there for fresh colour to be implanted and retain in that area. If a colour boost is done prematurely on the brow area, it might look okay for a month or two, but I can guarantee over time that that pigment will not stay there and the body will just get rid of it very quickly. So not only might that be a waste of money for you, it also means that we've had to work over the skin again. And we don't want to keep compromising the condition of your skin. The least we put the needle in it, the better. So the longer it's left between colour boosts, the less chance there is of causing microscopic scarring, which could, over time, if the treatments are performed incorrectly, cause issues later down the line. Old, stale colour that's sitting in the eyebrows as well, if you then implant fresh colour over the top, will never look good. And if it does, it will be temporary. So there's a few things to look out for here. Ideally, saturation levels, when it's first done for you, should be as light as possible. If eyebrows are tattooed with a really heavy saturation of colour, that can sometimes take years for the body to break it down. And in some cases, I have had people say they've had their brows for 8, 10, 15 years and they haven't changed, apart from a shift in tone. And in that scenario, that tells me that permanent inks have been used, and therefore the only thing that can be done is to have them lasered, because the body is not going to break down those particles. That needs a strong machine to smash the particles into pieces for the body to then be able to get rid of it. Some people's bodies will really hold on to the pigment for a long time, and other people will reject it quite soon. It really, really is so impossible to understand why, because biologically we are all so unique, which is why I prefer less saturation always, because that's a good thing. It gives you choice. Less saturation equals less stress. It might mean that you need a colour boost sooner, but that's better all round. Heavily saturated and heavily implanted pigment into the skin almost certainly causes scar tissue, and we do not want that in our brows. So light application, let it fade as much as possible, have it redone again. Let it fade as much as possible, have it redone again. And in that fade out period, I know it's really frustrating, but these days there is a phenomenal conventional makeup out there that you can just use temporarily while you're going through that fading period. After all, if we have our nails done, they have to fade out. If we have our hair colour done, it has to grow out for a bit. Granted, the difference with permanent makeup is that the fade out period is for a long time, but it's manageable. So how can you tell? How do you know when your eyebrows will need colour boost? Well, in my opinion, it's really important to look visually. We're not just looking at the colour. We need to look at the overall brow. We need to see if we can still see some of those particles in the skin. They need to look translucent, a bit see-through, patchy probably, which is not desirable, I know. But at that stage, it's probably likely that there is now room to put fresh colour in. Another check you can do is to have a look back at old photos taken soon after you'd had your eyebrows done first of all. Check where they are now in comparison. Are they vastly different? If they are, you're probably ready for a boost. If they're not that much different, the chances are you're probably not ready yet. If you find you're turning to conventional makeup every day, even when you've got no other eye makeup on, that's another good sign. We have a made-up face and a non-makeup face. And your permanent makeup enhancement should always balance your non-made-up face. So no mascara, no lipstick, no eyeliner, just your brows. If your brows are still in balance when you've got no makeup on, then they're probably not ready for a colour boost. Lastly, if you really can't decide, send me a picture. I'll critique it for you and have a look and tell you what I think. Eyeliner lasts the longest generally out of all permanent makeup treatments, and depending on what type of eyeliner you've had will probably determine how long it will be before you need a colour boost. A lash enhancement is very subtle and very delicate and just sits along the lash line. Because it's quite a small, thin, delicate enhancement, there's much less pigment there for the body to hold on to, and it can break it down faster. If you've had an eyeliner or a winged Latino look, then there's a lot more packed particles in a tiny area of skin. And the eyelid skin is so thin that you only need a small amount for it to be completely full and saturated. The body generally tends to take longer to break down pigment from the eye area, so you can generally guarantee that eyeliners will last the longest out of all three areas. If you are using your eyeliner pencil or a liquid liner again every day, and you feel that when you take your mascara off, your eyes have disappeared again, then you're ready for a colour boost. If you can still see colour, if when you put your mascara on, it highlights your enhancement, if maybe you have your eyelashes tinted and your enhancement comes back to life, then you're not ready for a colour boost just yet. When it comes to determining whether your lips are ready for a colour boost, they need to look a bit translucent too. You'll probably find that you've lost some definition around the edge. That once crisp line has gone a little bit blurry maybe, and you might see a few patches here and there if you look closely in the mirror or a magnifying mirror. If you find you're picking up your lip liner more often, if you find you're applying lipstick again more frequently throughout the day, or your lip stain or lip gloss, then the chances are you're ready for a colour boost. When it comes to colour boost appointments, for me, and I'm not talking about any other artists here, just myself, they are not appointments to keep adding and adding and adding pigment to make the areas stronger, darker, more defined. Because what can very easily happen over time is our eyes adjust and we get used to how we look with these permanent makeup enhancements done. So the job of a colour boost is to replace what you had done initially. So that initial look that you look like after you'd had your first treatment, so before you'd had it done, you looked like this, and then you had the first one, you looked like this. And so that the aim of a colour boost is to not keep adding and adding and adding and adding, so it gets darker and darker and darker, or stronger and bolder, more pigment, more build-up, more saturation. The point of a colour boost is to take you back to this second or third session here, where it looked its best and it was what you wanted in the first place. It's very easy for us to adjust. It's very easy for us to want more and more and more, and we can lose sight of that quite quickly. My job is to keep you in check and to make sure that we don't go too over the top with the colour, so we keep it looking soft and natural and subtle as it should be, in my opinion. So colour boosts are a restoration appointment. They restore what you first had done. They're not to build and build and build and build. If we do that, that's just going to lead to further problems down the line. And it's my job to future-proof your permanent makeup treatments. As an artist and a professional, I feel I have a responsibility to look after your skin and ensure that enhancements stay subtle and don't ever leave you in a position where you are no longer able to enjoy it because it's too much. And your only choice then is to go and get it lasered. You should be able to benefit from having permanent makeup for years to come. And that can only be possible if the skin integrity is held by applying pigment delicately, not saturating, not using permanent inks, and allowing plenty of time in between treatments for the body to break down that pigment. If we tick all those boxes, then your skin and your permanent makeup enhancement should look really good all the time for many, many years. So I hope some of this has helped you, and if it's thrown up any extra questions for you, please ask away.